Welcome back, Ramdeen and Black with you. We are looking ahead to this weekend. The 170-pound matchup, Johnny Hendricks and the Wonderboy Stephen Thompson collide in the main event in Las Vegas. And right now, I think 155 pounds, 170 pounds, two of the deepest divisions in all of mixed martial arts. Robbie Lawler, Carlos Condit, Rory McDonald, Johnny Hendricks, Wonderboy Thompson, Sage Northcutt up at 170 pounds, Damian Maia, Hector Lombard, really an awesome time for the division once ruled by George St. Pierre.
There are going to be people who are just going to call you out on throwing Sage Northcutt up in there. That's how much hate there is for that kid. But there's also a lot of love for him, too. So, and we talked about him earlier in the show. But 170, man, it's unbelievable. And Stephen Thompson is definitely somebody to watch, as is Johnny Hendricks, man. This weekend coming up, that's going to be a killer one, and it's a really important fight. Hendricks, we know kind of what he is, and he has changed trainers, so I don't know how much has changed, but I don't know that much needs to change. When your left hand turns guys off like that, and you use that left hand to leverage your badass wrestling, or you use your crazy wrestling to make guys defend, kind of what Anthony Johnson just did to Ryan Bader, put him in a bad spot. And, you know, so that's a great fight. But, man, I'm having fun breaking down Stephen Thompson for that previous show we're doing this week. He is so skilled. Can
we take anything away from that fight with Tarek Saffiedine and Jake Ellenberger, which is also a 170-pound matchup, where Saffiedine really utilized everything. Utilized kicks, utilized movement, utilized pressure, in and out attacks on Jake Ellenberger. Will Stephen Thompson employ the same type of strategy? Because you mentioned Johnny Hendricks reduces the menu, left hand, wrestling. That's it.
Well, we can go further to Ellenberger and Thompson. And that, when he was fighting against Ellenberger, what you gotta do is you gotta move towards it. So a hook kick is coming out here, you retreat. You start retreating, he sets you up with the side kick. Now we got you moving backwards, you'll panic. As you come in, he'll intercept you with his quick hands. It's a very simple game on distance and timing and threats. You need to move towards it. You need to get his hips, and Hendricks will do that. So it is a great fight. It really is. There aren't a lot of them that just end up on paper as style versus style anymore, but this one definitely does, and I'm excited to see it. I don't know that the winner, where he is as far as another fight, and then Robbie or whoever is the champ at the time, but we'll see.
Right now, of course, I think most people coming out of that Carlos Condit, Robbie Lawler fight, they feel that Carlos Condit, I don't know necessarily robbed is the word. I think the majority of people felt that Carlos Condit won that fight. But it doesn't look like the UFC is going to give Carlos Condit the rematch right away anyways. What do you anticipate? Because word is it could be Tyron Woodley. The UFC promised him a fight. Damian Maia says, look, if I do what I'm going to do to Matt Brown, it's going to be definitive. The UFC is going to be forced to put me in there against Robbie Lawler. Rory McDonald still sitting on the sidelines. Right now, there's a lot of options for the champion.
It used to be that this kind of speculation that happened when there was less analysis of fighting and less detail, less known about fighting. This was 90% of the conversation. Oh, who's going to get that next one? They said Tyron Woodley will get it, but Carlos Condit's back. This was a heavy part of the conversation. Now we tend to use this conversation just to sort of start salivating over what some of these matchups could be. You know, Damian Maia versus who? Like, name me Tyron Woodley.
Oh, man.
You
Hector Lombard.
Damian Maia versus Robbie Lawler, to me, is absolutely fascinating because Lawler forces you to fight a certain way, and he's forced Hendricks to do it. He forced Condit to do it. He forced Rory to do it. I don't think you can force Maia to fight that way, and Maia takes down everybody. Ryan LaFleur is the grinding wrestler. Took this guy down like crazy. And this guy knew that was the game plan, to retreat, strike at distance, get him to overcommit. Kept him down all the time. That's an interesting fight for me.
But what about the fight with Damian Maia and Rory McDonald, for example? Damian Maia did manage to get Rory McDonald down, but then Rory figured it out and ended up defeating Damian Maia. Would you not figure it would look a little closer to that than it would Damian Maia, Gunnar Nelson?
That's a very good question. That's a very, very good question. I think there's a lot of things about Rory McDonald that we all kind of universally go, yeah, this guy's one of the best in the world. Oh my God, that fight with Robbie was great. But I don't know if we really understand the full scope of how special this guy is. He's winning in hard situations. Like he made Damian Maia get exhausted by being on top and in control. And if you do jiu-jitsu, especially if you do submission grappling with punches or mixed martial arts, you know how crazy that is, particularly when you're looking at how skilled Damian Maia is. Just think about it. He's winning and he's making you work, and you are slowly opening the tap and letting his energy drain out. That's pretty incredible.
Oh, yeah. But again, when you look at who are the best matchups, what are the best challenges, from a technical standpoint, is there anybody at 170 pounds, we're not talking about George St. Pierre, that would give the champion, Robbie Lawler, the best fight he's had? I mean, we all look at Carlos Condit. Is that Nick Diaz upon his return? Who do you feel is the best matchup for Robbie Lawler technically?
I think the best matchup for Ronda Rousey was Miesha Tate a third time, because she had already faced the stress, the terror, the knowing, being thrown, and then she could keep getting better every time. And I think Carlos Condit's the same thing. He's faced it. He's tangled with it. He stood up to it. He handled the pressure and the power. And that 5th round, I think he's got the best chance of anybody to do it. I really do. He's also learned what worked in the 2 or 3, depending on how he scored it, rounds that he won. And so I think but I also am the guy I'm most interested to see, and against Lawler, because that's great for him, because he'd go for the belt, is Tyron Woodley. You know how good he is based on his wrestling, his ability to explode and close distance, a whole bunch of things. But he is way better than we think, because there's been a big space of time where he's been making dramatic improvements with Duke Roufus. And there's a lot of these times we look at fights and go, oh, well, this guy beat this guy. That means it looks this way. His striking is better than his wrestling. You got to factor in growth. You got to factor in evolution. You got to factor in improvements that these guys make, sometimes exponential improvements, and that's why I want to see Tyron Woodley.
Carlos Condit, though, we were talking about Sage Northcutt and talking about his mentality. Carlos Condit, this is a guy that has essentially done everything in mixed martial arts. Fought in Japan, was a champion in the lesser, I don't even know, the developmental league, so to speak, in the WEC.
Turns out that wasn't so.
Of course. Then, of course, comes over to the UFC, becomes the champion at 170 pounds, loses to Robbie Lawler, and says, you know what, I'm contemplating retirement.
Yeah, and that one actually makes sense. Contemplating retirement, as we know, is.
But isn't that what he does? Isn't this is what defines? I mean, Carlos Condit will tell you I'm a father and a husband, but the fact is,
bingo.
He went to Japan. He wasn't making any money fighting in these organizations. Now he's making the most money he's ever made in combat sports. He's got fame. He's got recognition, and the fact is, you have a fight where a lot of people thought that you won. Why are you thinking about retiring?
Well, he did say the only fight he wanted was that one again. He finally got the taste for the greatest level of combat that he'd been seeking all that time in Japan, all that traveling around the world, truly seeking to be pushed to the limits of what he was physically, mentally, and technically capable of. And he found it. What do you want to do? You want to climb a smaller mountain? You want to just go climb some new mountains?
But aren't they all new challenges? You're dealing with individuals like, for example, Johnny Hendricks, Tyron Woodley.
He fought them.
That's right. Yep. He lost to those guys.
I don't think that, I know Condit enough to say, how you doing, man, and him to whack me on the back and say, what's up? That's it. I don't know him personally. But the feeling that you do get is we've done this, you know? And you hit it on the head. This is true. This is not a Condit. This is not saying I know what Condit's thinking. But this is something we've seen from many fighters of all types over the years. And that is, when you start out, you're a fighter. That is who you are, what you're defined by. Later on, you're a husband and a father. You're going back to being a son to your parents if you're lucky enough that they're still around. You're a brother. You're a friend. You're a small business owner. You're all these other things, and you fight. And that's what you hope for every single fighter, so that when they're 35 or injured or 50 or whatever point, one day you have to stop fighting, you hope that they are many more of these things so they have something else to go on. If they're lucky enough to be those and to have the money, then you got to go out sometime. Why not go out after the greatest fight you've ever had in your life? Why not go out after you found the truths that you were looking for? You didn't win, but you found the true journey of combat. And you're either going to go or go, really, I get one more shot at that guy? I can rewrite that thing and win it? All right, I'll stick around for that one.
When you look at a guy like Rory McDonald or Carlos Condit or even Johnny Hendricks, they lost to the champion. They have a chance to go back to the drawing board and say, as you mentioned before, if we're not winning, we're learning or we're growing. They have a chance to grow based on the fact that, okay, we couldn't defeat Robbie Lawler. We now need to seek out certain things, how we can beat Robbie Lawler. how does Robbie Lawler grow, considering the fact that he's at the top of the mountain?
Yeah, that's a great point, man. And when David Mullins and I were doing the Mentality of Combat Sports podcast, he's a sports psychology consultant, if you don't follow Fight Network that much, who contributes here a lot for SBG and a ton of elite UFC fighters. And when we were talking about it, after he beat Hendricks and he got his guy to put the belt on him, that lifelong goal had been achieved. He needed to set new goals, or else we've reached the pinnacle. Maybe we don't train as hard, maybe we don't get as good. He needs to set new goals, and clearly he did, because the next fight was even better, and the next fight was even better. So he is setting new goals still to this day, and which is why he may stay the champion for a while.
Well, we could see another challenger emerge this coming weekend as Johnny Hendricks collides with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. We have a 1-hour preview show on Thursday, February 4th at 6 p.m. Robin Black, John Pollock, and I will break down all of the mixed martial arts action. And then Saturday night at 8 p.m., tune in to Fight Network for the prelims. The main event, KJ Noons taking on Josh Berkman at 155 pounds. And again, I have to talk about that 125-pound matchup, Justin Scoggins and Ray Borg. They are very high on Justin Scoggins down at ATT.